Nerd morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy, and this is the Nerd Morning Show, a place where we celebrate nerd culture by talking about things like books, video games, comics, and other nerdy things. Today, we're going to be talking about the Dragon Reborn, which is book 3 in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I absolutely love this series. It has a huge story that covers an extremely large universe that is so cool. And what's interesting is all of the different cultures and characters and how we essentially have many different story threads that weave together to create a really amazing whole. This story really separates into, I would say, really 3 different stories, 4 including Rand's. But we don't really get to get a lot of his story. It's very interesting, and we'll dive into that here in a second. The pacing of this story is, I think, really fantastic. This is one of the more high energy stories, I think, in this book series, and I really love the growth of all the different characters. Perrin's story is fantastic, and the things that we get between Nynaeve, Eqwene, and Elaine and their adventure really kicks them off, I think, in being heroes in their own right, and rather than having things happen to them like we had really with the last book. Now, this is going to be a spoiler full review. I'm going to be talking about some of the things in this story in detail from this point on, so just be aware of that. Also, if you haven't already, give this video some love by tapping that like button, and if you haven't, also, I would invite you to consider to subscribe. Now, let's dive into some of these stories and the different experiences that we have in this book, and I'm just so excited for this. So the big character of this huge epic hero story is Rand. Rand is the chosen savior of the world who will battle the Dark One and save all of time and reality, right? This is a big quest for him, and the beginning of this book, he is now like been declared. We got that at the very end of the last book. He's at the camp of the dragon, and we start to see that he's a little paranoid and troubled because of this fate, and he's still been fighting against that fate for him through this book, and his coming to accept that is a lot of what his story in this book is about. He ultimately chooses to run from the camp, and he ends up heading towards Tyr and Kalendor, which is this essentially magic sword that is the sword that is not a sword, as they say. It's a focus for him to be able to use the male source of the power, Saidin. And that is a really interesting thing because this is a big declaration point for him, of course, being the dragon instead of just being some false dragon, which they've had to face already in the stories. And that's like a sign to everybody that he really is the Dragon Reborn. And when he goes and claims it, that's when he kind of also accepts that for himself. And in the next book, we see that he is actually acting as the dragon and is doing things more as that than necessarily just the regular farm boy who has been swept into this adventure. Now, the other things that I think are really interesting in this is we do see that he is trying to be a regular person. He's playing music for his food, and he's going on this like vagabond traveling experience, and this is a traveling adventure for him. But we don't really get a lot of that because he isn't really one that has a lot of screen time in this story. Most of the things that we hear are these snippet adventure moments where Perrin's dreams like bump into Rand's dreams, or Egwene's dreams bump into Rand's dreams, things like that. And those are really the few experiences that we get with Rand. Other than that, we get the secondhand accounts of that. And I think this is really amazing because this is the big transition between Rand being Rand and Rand being the Dragon Reborn. And so we have a lot of this growth, a lot of this change, and we get to have it being told to us in these second-hand accounts, or these legends that are starting to create and being built around him interacting with people, and thus changing the pattern because of his Ta'veren nature, which is an individual who's going to affect the reality of the world around him in a powerful, powerful way. And so by getting that from secondhand experiences, secondhand accounts, we can kind of see the myth of Rand, the myth of the Dragon Reborn coming out because of the ways that he affects people. And he really does like affect them in waves, with the evidences of things like all of the different weddings and him like going and playing at the weddings, or how people walking around are like making big changes and decisions that they otherwise wouldn't have made, and he seems to just be this force for change. And we also see how there are really positive waves as well as negative waves, and it's just kind of like chaos is coming out in his wake as he's traveling. And that's really, really interesting. And getting it from that secondhand experience, I think, has a different impact than if it was through Rand and through his perspective. One of the big things that we get, and I had mentioned, was that Rand is doing big battles, and he's doing those battles in his dreams, more so than when he's awake. And these dreams are very traumatic. And he's being essentially battling the Forsaken and the Dark One in his dreams, which is a whole world and universe here inside of the Wheel of Time story. That is a big, big aspect, and we get more of that here. And I think that that's important to realize, that he has been doing all of these battles, even though we only get like a hint of it here and a hint of it there. He's having big, big conflicts, and we don't even really get them. They're just kind of like a side note to us as a reader, but these are causing serious trauma, which is going to ultimately turn him to be a little bit more paranoid, a little bit more troubled, really pushing the madness that he is going to have to face, and is in many ways propelling him towards being prepared to be the dragon. And it's a very transformative experience between where he was in the first two books and how he is going to be heading as a character in the future after this book. So another big story is Perrin, Moiraine, and Lan. Now, these characters are ultimately going to be trying to follow Rand and catch up to him. But no matter how fast they travel, they can never catch up to Rand. Rand is moving just faster than them because of how the wheel is weaving the time and like the path that they must all follow. And this story, I would say, really is being most focused around Perrin's perspective. And they're trying to follow and catch up to Rand, and we get this, the second-hand accounts are being found mostly by their group, and Moiraine is looking for these events in order to be able to track Rand, and so we're being made aware of them in the story in that fashion. Also, we meet our first Aiel this way. An Aiel is put in a cage, and Perrin is going to rescue this caged Aiel, who is Gaul, and this is a big moment, because this is something that does change the fate of Perrin, because Gaul becomes a good friend and ally to him in the future, and him rescuing him here helps that future come to pass. We also meet some hunters of the Horn, one noteworthy one being Fail, who joins their party and is fascinated with Perrin and the party as well, and so she joins in and ultimately becomes an ally tracking after the Dragon Reborn, and she gets a bigger adventure than really she signed up for, but she, I think, is an amazing addition and really helps build out the character of Perrin, because she is both a romantic interest as well as a point of contention, because her way of thinking in life is different than Perrin's, and they butt heads. And it's really interesting to see him have to stumble through and interact with her. In their adventures, they also battle Darkhounds, which is going to parallel to some of the things that Perrin deals with, because he is one of the human wolf walkers, and he's been starting to dive into dreams, and we see other things that really affect him, and that future of him as being like this leader in this special power that he is afforded in this story. And it's a really, really cool thing to see as it grows out. And we get to see that kind of budding here in some interesting ways. Also, we find that in Ilion, that city is being ruled by one of the Forsaken Samael, and they set up a bunch of things that are going to be having to be dealt with in future stories. There's a lot of setup work that goes on. Ultimately, they head and make their way to Tyr. Another story that we get is with Nynaeve, Eqwene, and Elaine. Now, they have come back to the White Tower. They get punished. Also, since Nynaeve is already accepted, Eqwene and Elaine are given the opportunity to become accepted as well, and this makes them to be able to spend a little bit more free time in studying what they want and all of those types of things. But also, they now are being tasked by the Amerlin seat to hunt the Black Aja, because they know that this is the only like little group of people who is going to be able to be trusted as not being part of the Black Aja, and thus like they're safe to hunt them. They can be trusted, and this is very dangerous because these are individuals who are extremely powerful, extremely capable, and already know that Nynaeve, Eqwene, and even Elaine are ones that should be kept tabs of and aware because of their association with Rand. And that it says like they've already got a target painted on their backs, but they're sent out to go and hunt the Black Aja anyways. And that is an interesting conflict that we get, but also is something that helps propel them to make choices for themselves and to be active. And it really helps these characters step up and to do more. And it's awesome because these are some of the coolest characters in the series, and I love their stories so much. They give Mat a letter to deliver to Queen Morghese for Elaine, and they choose to head off to hunt the Black Aja in Tyr. Now, this means all of these stories are heading back to Tyr, which is where we're going to be wrapping up in the story. And they're there not for Rand or for Kalendor or any of those types of things, but because they're hunting the Black Aja, who happen to be there because they're trying to set up a trap for Rand. And ultimately, Nynaeve, Eqwene, and Elaine are that trap. They get caught by the Black Aja, and they're going to be held to be used as leverage against Rand. And also in this story, we really get to see Eqwene starting to really explore dreaming and how to find facts and how that world of dream works. And this it becomes a big part of Egwene's journey, and that really takes off here. Then we also get the story of Mat and Tom Merrilin. Mat, at the beginning of the story, gets healed by the Amerlin seat and a few other of the Aes Sedai. He was cursed by a dagger and finally gets that opportunity to be saved. He is the sounder of the Horn of Valir and is also Ta'veren himself, and so he is a really important special character, and he is trying to be controlled by the Amerlin and by those who know who he really is, and so he wants a way to escape. And he is given that opportunity by when the girls go and give that letter to him to go and to deliver to Queen Morghese, and an opportunity with a kind of like a letter that's like a free do what you want from the Amerlin, which was to help him to escape. And so he leaves Tar Valon, and also while he's heading out, he discovers his luck, that he can dice and pretty much always win. And this is a big aspect of who he's going to be the trickster, the gambler, and he's going to have this type of role. And one of the things that he continuously says is, "I'm not a hero," and he really, really is. He is a trickster and all of those things, but he is also has such a huge, interesting growth and fate, and we get to see him kind of on a heroic adventure on his own, where the last book was not really focused on. He was more of a MacGuffin. I gotta go and rescue Mat by getting the dagger and things like that, were a lot of Rand's motivations and even Perrin's motivations. And so he gets to have this own experience for himself finally in this one. He goes, meets Queen Morghese, which is a big deal for him, sees a big city. He sees that Lord Gabriel is wanting to kill Elaine, and so he's starting to hit into story points that are going to have ramifications in the future as the story continues to expand. And ultimately, he and Tom Marilyn make it to the Stone of Tyr, saves the girls from the Black Aja, and has all this big adventure, but ultimately lands in Tyr where Rand is, and everyone kind of teams up together at the end. Then we have this big battle at the end with the Forsaken. Rand gets Kalendor, and the big climax of the story. With this, as the story goes about, we have Perrin, who goes into the wolf dream and saves Fael there. And this has an interesting parallel, because when everyone else in the future, in the great battle near the end of the series, Rand and Mat and all of the girls and all these types of adventures are going to be on the physical plane, where they're battling and doing intense adventures there. And during all of this battle at the end of the series, Perrin has to go and battle in the wolf dream. And so I think this moment where the dragon is really reborn by claiming Kalendor and really declaring himself, where Rand accepts this, we have this parallel of situations here as well as in the future. And I love that parallel. I think that's really beautiful and interesting how their paths are set here and are showcased here, and how that is paralleled in the future. Well, Rand goes and battles Belial, and Moiraine kills him by Bellfire. Balsamum comes out, and they battle Rand using Kalendor, and ultimately he's got a human body, so they're thinking, is this Ishmael or one of the other Forsaken? And ultimately, of course, Balsamum is not going to be defeated. The Dark One really can only be defeated in the end of the series, and so of course we have more adventures yet to follow in this story. And I don't know, this is one of the more powerful stories for me in the series. It has some fantastic moments, and I really, really love it. For you, what are some of your favorite moments of this story? What are the characters that you feel had the most growth or change, or that you would have loved to see a little bit more of their story told in this book? For me, one of the things that I would have loved to see more is of Rand and his journey. But the things that they did because of the secondhand accounts are really, really powerful. So Robert Jordan, I think, masterfully told this story. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, put those comments and thoughts in. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You can find out more Nerd Morning content like this on different platforms like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and other places at Nerd Morning. Also, I have a gaming channel where I do game streams here on YouTube, and that's at Nerd Morning Gaming. And I also have a merch store where I am starting to sell some products that's pretty new, and that is at nerdmorning.com/merch. So you can check out all of those things at those different places. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys again next time on another video.